start employing this kind of American slang. They start talking French with American hip-hop accent. Here in the Netherlands, we have hip-hop being more or less, the hip-hop culture being more or less owned or appropriated by Moroccan kids, meaning that white kids from Culemborg or Purmerend who want to be cool start talking Dutch with a Moroccan accent because it makes them feel like gangsters from Los Angeles or something like. You know, there's this really weird kind of very unpredictable combination of global culture and its localized form. But do not underestimate its value, because it can also mean that once the kids in the French banlieue heard Public Enemy for the first time and they tried to figure it out what these guys were talking about, it gave them the possibility, you know, that Serge Gainsbourg is not the only musical option for them, and they could really formulate their own stories, create their own images. So there is and the funny thing is, when they looked at these clips in the projects, these hip-hop guys in the projects of the Bronx, and the Public Enemy in the projects in the Bronx, they said, we are also living in the projects. Because of course the high-rises in the Bronx are so connected in a way, are so much based on the same architectural ideas as the high-rises in the French banlieue, that also the recognition of these huge, concrete, alienating, half-destroyed urban decors, all of a sudden, through hip-hop clips, all over the world, people started discovering that they were living in the same kind of urban decor. So the spreading of hip-hop culture meant the global recognition of, my God, they locked us all up in the same kind of architecture, which was then, of course, heavily exaggerated, because a lot. So what you have now is, for example, Dutch rappers who grew up in the suburbs, the cute Dutch suburbs, then bring out albums with on the album covers half-destroyed high-rise complexes that they have never lived in. But anyway, for us there's an incredibly important or mystifying and interesting combination. And not only that, especially in the reggae and hip-hop era, which is of course an extremely verbal music too. They are basically also descriptions and listings of these areas and of the violence there and the fear. So also as documentary material, songs by Linton Kwesi Johnson or Public Enemy or Ice-T, Ice Cube are nearly historical material that describe these incidents. So what are we going to do? What we basically are going to do the next the next 4 lectures, each of it will be entirely dedicated to one city, one riot, one period. Now, but then of course set in a wider. So we will start with what they call the civil rights riots. This is next week. The civil rights riots in the late 60s in the United States, where you had riots erupting in Watts, in Los Angeles. The biggest and worst ones, some of the biggest and worst ones were in Newark. It's that other city opposite from New York. And of course in Detroit. Detroit will be our focus. Now Detroit, and here you have the spreading of this is the riot area of especially Tim and Claudia, they have been working on a kind of mapping, a kind of real, because Delftian morphological analysis of riots. It's Maurits de Hoog meets Chuck D, you could say. These are the sketches. This is the riot that everything began with in 1967. A blind pig, meaning an illegal bar. That was, the police came there and there was too much noise. The clients came out, started fighting the police, and then within a couple of days, the entire city was on fire. They brought in the army, had to come in and bring order. It also meant really the entire city was on fire. The whole city, the whites who had been leaving already for decades, leaving the city and living in the suburbs beyond 8 Mile, another mythical term, never came back again after this. The blacks who could afford to leave also left. So we will talk about this city. We will also look at it, how it could all come so far. What was the role of large-scale planning? Because one of the things that happened in the years leading up to this riot in 1967 was an incredibly powerful and ambitious mayor who wanted to bring in new highways and destroy the slums and put the people in modern new homes. These 3 women, by the way, that you see here are the Supremes, with Diana Ross in the middle. And we will also, so there was up till when the riots erupted in 1967, they came just as unexpected as they did to the French government in 2005. They said, yes, but we were doing everything for these people. We were destroying their homes. We were putting them into wonderful new apartment buildings. Of course, not all of them were finished yet. We brought in new highways so that everybody could reach everywhere, etc. So there was this complete disconnect between the ambitions and the expectations and the tools of this modernist planning government and the effects or the way that it was understood. You remember the Urban Renewal album cover? By the people on the ground. And one of the interesting things here as a kind of a nearly symbolic or allegorical side story is the role of Motown. The Motown album, the Motown music company, that Motown means Motor Town. Motor Town was Detroit, the city of Ford and General Motors. Motown, as an idea, was that we use the most exciting and new black music, but we dress it up in such a way. We put Marvin Gaye in a tuxedo. We put the Supremes in a kind of something that approaches Chanel. And we show, we use it as a sign of aspiration for the black middle classes. So it's not this kind of dirty, low-down southern black music. And we make it less threatening for the white audiences so that white kids will also buy black music. That was the whole idea of Motown. Because before Motown, black music could only be sold if it were first translated by white people. Look at Elvis Presley. So Motown was all about a kind of wonderful economic and cultural integration of black and white culture. But what happened after the riots, the first thing what Motown did was say goodbye, and they left for Los Angeles. So it's funny, it's like the Brooklyn Dodgers. After Brooklyn also became very poor and criminal, the Brooklyn Dodgers also left for Los Angeles. It's kind of like a graveyard for... So the interesting thing is after Motown was the kickstart of another kind of black music culture that was much more political, much more combative. You had people like James Brown becoming not just the entertainer but singing songs like Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. Marvin Gaye stripping off his tuxedo and wearing these enormous leather overcoats, looking like a pimp, and singing the inner city blues about the destruction of the inner cities. So you could see that this politicization of black music ran parallel to the destruction of the black inner cities. Here you see a bit of the destruction going on. This highway, of course, destroyed thousands and thousands of houses and created enormous obstacles and walls, but enabled the inner city to live on for a little while, because the white suburban people could just zip in and out of the city without having to meet anyone that didn't look like them. The next story we will tell is about, that's in 2 weeks, is about the British riots in the late 70s and early 80s, the Broadwater Farm riots. Now, Broadwater Farm was an interesting, I'm sorry, this is still, this is Newark. This is Detroit, how it looks today, still does. This is how it looked before and after. Now we go to, in 2 weeks we go to, so after, we go to the Broadwater Farm riots. The Broadwater Farm riots of 1985, and they were not the biggest riots or the worst riots, but they are the best, the story that can be told in the most compact way. This is the beginning of our kind of morphological analysis of the riots. This is Broadwater Farm was one big housing complex in the typical 60s way. Everything connected with a pedestrian kind of platform. You have it's in the same kind of tradition, the same tools, the same ideas as the Bijlmer, but also many similar objects or complexes in France. It became more and more purely lived in by ethnic minorities. We also, for each lecture, we will have extremely precise, painfully precise timelines of the exact way that the riots develop and what is destroyed by who, when, why, with which tools, etc. Interesting thing is, it's research that is possible because of insurance companies. Because insurance companies, they point out very precisely where all the destruction is going on, so you can translate that into maps. This is the Broadwater Farm area as it was planned for the white middle classes, who then, when it is finished, decide, oh no, we'd rather live in suburbia. And so somebody, and this is this is how it looks like today. And these are, what happened is, again, after a long period of growing unemployment, of also many kind of the idea and maybe possibly the truth of police harassment against the black kids who lived there, against petty crime, etc. This area was standing. There you see Broadwater Farm on the right, and then Victorian townhouses on the left, where the white middle classes lived, and then on the right the black people lived. And then there's a case of police brutality. A woman dies. The youth revolts against the police. And the interesting thing of this riot is to study how the whole police battle was about pushing them back in their box. Out of the 19th century houses, back in the box, and containing them there. So you can see that also in the riot itself and the fights itself have a spatial character that is drawable. The third case is Los Angeles 1992. And this one is particularly interesting because here in the capital of media, Los Angeles, media played a crucial part in this riot. It all started with a guy being dragged out of his car and beaten up by the police, suing the police being then tried in a completely white area, far out of the black centers of